On Thanksgiving, I arrived at my parents' house with my kids. My dad smirked. This was supposed to be a nice family dinner. Why did you come? I just smiled and left. 2 hours later, I made him regret every word. Hey, Reddit. So, I don't know where to start, but before anything, I need to give you some background, because it's important. Grab your snacks and bear with me till the end. Name's Noah, 39 male. 3 years ago, I lost my wife to a brain aneurysm on a random morning. One second she was loading the dishwasher and singing some 80s song, doing that little shoulder shimmy she always did. The next second she just stopped, dropped a plate, then collapsed before I could cross the kitchen to catch her. Gone before the ambulance even arrived at our house. Julie was 31. Our kids were 9 and 7. We had a mortgage, 2 car payments, and exactly $4,000 in savings that got wiped out within the first month on funeral costs and keeping the lights on. She'd been my shield from the world. The one who could spot garbage people from a mile away and shut them down before I even knew what was happening. When my dad would start his guilt trips, she'd cut him off mid-sentence with some polite but brutal comment that left him stunned. When my mom would fish for money, Julie would suddenly remember we had bills due that same day. After she died, I was running on autopilot. Single dad mode. Shipping coordinator making 42 grand a year trying to cover a mortgage meant for 2 incomes. Daycare that cost almost as much as rent. 2 kids who kept asking when mom was coming home. I was barely keeping my head above water. That's when my parents decided to start collecting. They didn't come to the funeral. Well, they showed up, but my dad left before the reception because the pastor talked too long and he had somewhere to be. That somewhere was a card game with his buddies. My mom spent the service on her phone texting about curtain fabric for her dining room. When I asked her to put it away, she told me I was being controlling and that people grieve differently. First month after Julie died, silence. Nothing. No calls, no texts, no checking if I was okay or if the kids needed anything. Radio silence while I figured out how to be both parents to 2 children while processing my own loss. Then came the first request. Text from my dad. Need to borrow $300 for truck registration. Urgent. I can't drive without it, and I need it for work. Pay you back Friday. I sent it. I was barely functional, just trying to survive each day. Figured that's what family does. 2 weeks later, my mom called about her prescriptions. Insurance wasn't covering them. She needed $200 to fill them, or she'd be in pain. I sent it the same day. Week later, she posted photos of a shopping haul, new clothes, new shoes, some decorative vases for the house. When I mentioned the timing seemed off, she got defensive. Said the clothes were on clearance and did I expect her to look homeless just because times were tough. Said I was being controlling, just like always. That word, controlling. She loved using it. Anytime I questioned anything, I was controlling. Anytime I wanted to understand where the money went, I was controlling. The pattern got set over 3 years. They'd disappear for weeks, then suddenly remember I existed when they needed money. Every request was urgent. Every situation was a crisis. And I kept sending it because some broken part of me thought, that's what you do after your wife dies. You hold on to whatever family you have left, even if they're bleeding you dry. My brother had cut them off years earlier. Daniel. He left at 17, the second he finished high school. Moved 2 hours north and never looked back. I used to call him selfish for abandoning the family. Julie used to tell me I should do the same. Cut them off. Stop answering their calls. She saw right through them. I'd always defend them. Make excuses. Julie would shake her head and say one day I'd understand. She was right. Took me 3 years and $7,000 to figure it out. That's what I sent them while Ava wore jeans 2 sizes too small and Owen had holes in his sneakers. 7 grand. While I was one unexpected expense away from losing the house Julie and I had bought together. They'd trained me good. Trained me to feel guilty if I hesitated. Selfish if I said no. But people can only push so far before something breaks. For me, it took until Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. My mom insisted I bring the kids over. Said it was important for them to have family traditions after losing their mom. Didn't mention they'd skipped the last 3 holidays completely, leaving me to microwave turkey for my kids and pretend everything was normal. But this year, she wanted us there. I showed up with homemade sweet potato casserole that I'd burned 2 hours making, plus a store-bought pie because I'd run out of time. My daughter Ava was wearing her nice dress. She's 12, looks more like her mom every day. Same dark hair and stubborn jaw. My son Owen had actually combed his hair without being asked 3 times. He's 10, built like a string bean. Inherited my tendency to overthink everything. The door was unlocked. I let us in, called out a greeting, got nothing back except the blast of football commentary from the TV. My dad was in his recliner with a drink in hand, looking comfortable. My mom was in the kitchen with my aunt and two cousins. I set the casserole on the counter. Nobody looked at it. Nobody said thanks for coming or, hey kids, good to see you. My mom glanced over, made a face at the pie, and asked why I'd bought store brand when I knew she preferred the bakery kind. The meal itself was tense. My dad made comments about the turkey being dry, which my mom had cooked, so she snapped at him. Then they both turned on me when I asked if anyone wanted more rolls. My kids ate in silence, eyes down. Owen barely touched his food. Ava kept glancing at the door. My cousin tried making small talk about football. My dad interrupted to complain about the refs, then his coworkers, his neighbors. Everything was someone else's fault. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside, told me he needed to talk about something important, led me to the garage where he had paperwork spread out on his workbench. Some title transfer documents for a truck he was trying to sell, needed me to co-sign something because his credit was shot. Didn't ask, just told me where to sign. I asked why his credit was bad. He got defensive, said it was none of my business and I should just help out like a good son. Told him I needed to read what I was signing first. He snatched the papers back and said forget it, that I'd turned into one of those paranoid types who doesn't trust his own father. We went back inside. Everyone was gathering in the living room. I was helping Ava with her coat when my dad spoke up from his chair, loud enough for everyone to hear. This was supposed to be a nice family day. Why'd you even bother coming if you're just going to be difficult? Just like that. In front of my kids, my cousins, my aunt. No build-up, just a direct shot because I wouldn't blindly sign paperwork I hadn't read. Owen looked up at me with this expression, waiting to see what I'd do, whether I'd defend us or roll over like always. I told my kids to grab their stuff. We were leaving. My dad laughed, said I was being dramatic and couldn't take a joke. My mom chimed in that I was being too sensitive, that this is why Julie probably stressed herself into an aneurysm, having to deal with my attitude all the time. Something switched off in my brain. That comment about my dead wife. I walked out. Kids followed. Got in the car and left without another word. Ava asked if we were ever coming back. I said probably not. Owen said good. Grandpa's mean and Grandma's worse. We ended up getting burgers and eating them in the parking lot because everything else was closed. My kids seemed relieved, like they'd been holding their breath the whole time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept replaying the comment about Julie. I got up around 2 in the morning and started going through my bank statements. Pulled up every transfer I'd made to them over the past 3 years. $7,200. That's what I'd sent them since Julie died. In 3 years, while I was scraping by, missing payments, eating instant ramen 4 nights a week so my kids could have decent meals, I'd sent them over $7,000. I started making a list, pulling receipts from my email, checking old texts. Each one had a story, an excuse, an emergency that somehow never quite added up. Month after Julie died, $500 for dad's truck repair. 3 months after, $200 for mom's medication. She posted spa day photos that same weekend with fancy drinks and massage stones. 6 months after, $400 for mom's insurance deductible. She posted vacation photos in Branson that same week. 8 months after, $350 for emergency roof repair. The roof never got fixed. New patio furniture showed up instead. Year after, $600 for property tax emergency. They bought a new living room set that month, leather recliner included, and it went on. The pattern was obvious once I laid it out. They'd wait until I was vulnerable, stressed, overwhelmed, then hit me with an urgent request I couldn't say no to without feeling like garbage. And I'd send it every single time because I was trying to be better than they were, trying to prove I cared, trying to fill the gap Julie left with something that felt like family. I printed everything, built a folder with evidence of every lie, every dollar they'd taken while I struggled to keep my kids fed. Labeled it, in case I forget why I stopped answering. Then I did what I should have done years ago. Logged into the joint account we'd set up for emergencies and transferred every cent to my personal account. $3,412. Submitted a request to close it. Changed my phone number and blocked their old contacts. Set up 2-factor authentication on every account. Changed my email password. Added fraud alerts. Requested new debit cards with different numbers. It was 4 in the morning by the time I finished. I felt lighter. The calls started around 9. Had to be them using other people's phones since I'd blocked their numbers. I let every single one go to voicemail. Deleted them without listening. They could scream into the void for all I cared. My aunt called around noon. I picked up because she'd always been decent to me. She asked what happened at Thanksgiving. Said my parents were furious and claiming I'd stolen money from them. I told her the truth. The 3 years of bleeding me dry, the lies, the comment about Julie. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said she'd suspected something was off but didn't want to interfere. Said she was sorry she hadn't spoken up sooner. I told her it wasn't her fault. Asked her to do me a favor, though. Start documenting anything my parents said about me to other family members. Had a feeling I'd need evidence beyond just financial records. She agreed. That night, my dad showed up at my door. Didn't call first, just appeared on my porch around 8 while I was getting my kids ready for bed. Started pounding on the door, rattling the frame. My daughter got scared, hid in her room. My son stood beside me in the hallway like he was ready to fight. I opened the door but kept the chain on. My dad's face was red, eyes wild, veins popping in his neck. He started yelling immediately about how I'd stolen his money, how I had no right to close the account, how he was going to call the police and have me arrested for theft. Spit flying as he talked, finger jabbing toward my face. That was my money. You had no right. Every deposit came from me. Check the records. You ungrateful piece of... I raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head, and I sent you $7,000 while my kids wore clothes with holes in them? We're done here. I shut the door in his face. He kicked it. Hard. Dent in the bottom panel. Kept yelling through it for another 5 minutes. Finally heard his truck start up and peel out of the driveway. My son hugged me after. Said I did good. Kid was 10 years old telling me I did good standing up to my own father. That should have felt wrong, but it didn't. Now here's where things went to shit. My dad was a control freak. Always had been. The kind of guy who couldn't stand being told no, who'd rather burn a relationship to the ground than admit he was wrong. I'd spent 34 years managing his ego, bending around his moods, making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Not anymore. The messages started coming through other people. Cousins I barely knew asking me to reconsider. My mom's friends reaching out on social media. My uncle sent a long text about repaying what my parents had done for me. I ignored everything, blocked anyone who came at me on their behalf. Then my dad escalated. Showed up at my work. I coordinate shipping logistics for a distribution center. He walked right into the warehouse like he owned it, started making a scene in front of my coworkers and supervisor. Demanded I come outside and talk to him like a man instead of hiding behind locked doors. Security cameras caught the whole thing. Him pushing past the front desk, ignoring the receptionist telling him to sign in, marching through the warehouse floor yelling my name, found me at my desk, slammed his hand down on the surface hard enough to rattle my coffee cup. Started in immediately about the money, about family loyalty, about how I was going to fix this or else. My coworkers stopped what they were doing. 20 people watching this unfold. My supervisor had to call security. They escorted him off the property while he shouted about how I'd stolen from him and turned his whole family against him. Made me look like either a criminal or the son of a crazy person. I filed an incident report, gave them copies of the restraining order paperwork I'd already started. My supervisor asked if I needed to take the rest of the day. I said no, I needed the hours. Couldn't afford to miss work because my dad was having a meltdown. My aunt called me a few days later. Said my parents were telling everyone I'd attacked my dad at Thanksgiving, that I'd shoved him and threatened him. Complete fabrication, but people were believing it. My mom was playing victim, crying to anyone who'd listen about her ungrateful son. The smear campaign was rolling. Then, my aunt sent me screenshots of family group chats I wasn't part of. Messages from my mom painting me as unstable, dangerous, a bad father. Messages from my dad saying he feared for his safety, that I'd made threats. They were accusing me of exactly what they'd been doing. I saved everything. Then my brother called. We hadn't spoken in almost 8 years. Daniel, the one who'd cut ties with the family right after high school, moved 2 hours north, built his own life separate from the mess. Now I understood he'd just been the first one to see clearly. He'd heard through extended family about what was happening, said he believed me, that he'd dealt with the same thing years ago. He offered to meet up, maybe help me figure out what was coming next. I agreed. We met at a diner halfway between our cities that weekend. Spent 3 hours going through everything. He told me his story, years of the same pattern I'd experienced. When he finally said no and walked away, they spent years trashing his name. Told people he was on illegal substances, that he'd stolen from them. None of it was true. He showed me old text messages from when they'd tried to get him back under control. Threats mixed with guilt trips. Showed me the police reports he'd had to file when our dad showed up at his place and tried to force his way in. The pattern was identical. He asked what my plan was. I told him I was building a case, planning to file for a restraining order if the harassment didn't stop. Document everything. Cameras, recordings, copies of everything. Already on it. Got 3 years of bank records and screenshots. Good. because he won't stop until he either controls you again or destroys himself trying. I know. I'm ready for whatever comes next. He nodded. Said that was smart. Then he warned me that our dad wouldn't stop, that he'd keep escalating until he either regained control or destroyed me trying. Said I needed to be prepared for things to get worse before they got better. My dad couldn't accept the loss of power. The letters started showing up, handwritten, pages long, full of guilt trips and threats. He'd mail them to my house, drop them at my work, leave them on my car windshield. Each one got progressively worse. Started with appeals to family loyalty, progressed to accusations of abuse, ended with thinly veiled threats about what happens to sons who disrespect their fathers. The first letter was 3 pages about how he'd sacrificed everything to raise me. Second was 5 pages about all the ways I'd disappointed him over the years. Another one included a list of every gift they'd ever given me, with dollar amounts assigned. Then one that said I'd better watch my back, that karma has a way of correcting ungrateful children. The last one was just Bible verses about honoring your parents, underlined and highlighted in red ink. Yeah, of course he'd pulled that card. I photographed every single one. My mom tried a different approach. Showed up at my kids' school claiming she was there to pick them up for a dentist appointment. The office called me to confirm, and I shut it down immediately. Told them under no circumstances were my parents allowed to have contact with my children. Updated the authorized pickup list. Added notes to their files. When that didn't work, she tried the sympathy angle. Sent a message through my aunt saying she'd been diagnosed with some vague illness and needed family support during this difficult time. My aunt, to her credit, asked for medical records to verify. She stopped responding, but my dad was getting worse. Started driving by my house at odd hours. I'd see his truck creeping past at 2 in the morning. Sometimes he'd park across the street and just sit there, watching. Lights off, engine running. I installed a security camera, caught him on footage at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times. Documented everything. Took it all to the police, filed for a restraining order. Gave them the financial evidence, the threatening letters, the security footage, the incident report from my work. The officer handling my case looked through everything and said I had more than enough for an order of protection. This is stalking behavior. Combined with the workplace incident, you've got a solid case. How long until it's processed? 2 weeks, maybe less. Keep documenting everything until then. Took 2 weeks to process. During that time, my dad started calling my employer, claiming I was embezzling from them. Made anonymous tips that I was abusing my kids. Each accusation was investigated and dismissed, but it was exhausting defending myself against lies. My brother offered to come stay with me for a while. Said he didn't trust our dad not to do something stupid. I told him I'd be fine, that the restraining order would be enough to keep him away. Should have taken my brother up on that offer. The restraining order got approved. My dad was served papers at his house by a deputy. According to my aunt, who heard from a neighbor, he lost his mind. Ripped up the papers, threw them at the deputy, started yelling about how this was all my fault, and I'd regret turning the system against him. The deputy warned him that violating the order would result in immediate arrest. My dad apparently laughed and said good luck enforcing it. For about a week, things were quiet. No drive-bys, no letters, no random appearances. I started to think maybe the legal boundary had actually worked. Then my mom started calling from different numbers. I'd block one, she'd use another. Each message was the same script. I was tearing the family apart. I was keeping her from her grandchildren. I was a cruel son. The victim act was strong. She left a voicemail that particularly got to me. Sobbing, saying she didn't understand what she'd done to deserve this, that she'd given me life and this was how I repaid her. Conveniently forgetting the comment about Julie, the years of financial exploitation, the attempted school pickup, called from my aunt's phone, from what looked like burner numbers. Each time the same performance. My brother called around this time to check in. I told him about the guilt campaign. He laughed, said he'd gotten the exact same treatment when he cut them off. Said it would escalate to her trying to use other family members as flying monkeys. He was right. My aunt, a different aunt, not the one helping me, called saying she was hosting a birthday party for my cousin and really wanted my kids there. I asked if my parents would be there. Long pause. Then she admitted yes, but promised they'd behave. I declined. She got upset, said I was being unreasonable, blocked her number. My dad wasn't done. The restraining order said he had to stay 500 feet away. Didn't say anything about showing up just outside that boundary. Started parking his truck exactly 500 feet from my house. Technically legal, but clearly harassment. I called the police. They said unless he violated the specific terms of the order, there wasn't much they could do. Suggested I document everything and keep reporting. So I did. Ava would wake up crying. Owen started sleeping with a baseball bat next to his bed. They were 10 and 12 years old developing anxiety because my father couldn't accept being told no. I explained that Grandpa was sick in his head, that we were safe and I'd protect them. My brother said I should consider moving. Just pack up, find a place in a different city. Part of me wanted to. The other part refused to be driven out of my own home by a bully. This was the house Julie and I had bought together. I wasn't giving that up. Told him I was staying, that I'd fought too hard to build a life here to let my dad scare me away from it. Listen to me. When he gets desperate, he's going to do something stupid. Please be careful. I've got cameras, police on speed dial, restraining order in place. That's not enough if he snaps. I've seen him when he loses control. He said he understood, but that I should be ready for things to get worse. Our dad had a temper, and when cornered, he lashed out. Said he'd once seen our dad punch a hole through a door because Mom had contradicted him in front of company. I remembered that incident. I'd been 15. My brother was right to warn me. I just didn't think it would happen the way it did. The breaking point happened on a Saturday morning. I was making breakfast while my kids watched cartoons in the living room. I had my back to the front door when I heard it slam open. My dad had kicked it in. Frame splintered, lock useless. He stood in my doorway, face red, eyes wild. He'd violated the restraining order, and he didn't care. I moved immediately to put myself between him and my kids. Told them to go to their rooms, lock the doors. They scrambled, Ava grabbing Owen's hand and running. My dad started yelling immediately about how I'd humiliated him, turned his family against him, destroyed his reputation. How dare I get the law involved in family business? How dare I keep his grandchildren from him? I told him to leave, that he was violating a court order and I was calling the police. Pulled out my phone. He knocked it out of my hand. Crossed the space between us in 2 steps and shoved me back into the kitchen counter. Edge dug into my spine. I'm not a small guy, but he had rage-fueled adrenaline and the element of surprise. He grabbed my shirt, pulled me forward, slammed me back again. Coffee mug shattered on the floor. Started yelling about disrespect, about how I owed him everything. His fist connected with my jaw. Once, twice. I tasted blood. 3rd hit caught my cheekbone. Stars in my vision. I tried to fight back, but my dad had 20 pounds on me and decades of unchecked aggression. He got me on the ground, kept hitting, kept yelling. Knee pressed into my chest. Couldn't breathe right. Another punch split my lip. I could hear my kids screaming from their room. That sound, my children terrified while my father beat me in our kitchen. Something in me snapped. I managed to get an arm free and caught him in the throat with my elbow. He stumbled back, gasping, hands going to his neck. That's when my brother appeared. Later, I found out he'd been on his way over to check on me. Had a bad feeling all week. Pulled up just as my dad was kicking in the door. Called 911 from his car, then came in. My brother tackled my dad from the side. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Daniel got on top, pinned him down, told him to stop fighting or he'd knock him out. My dad kept struggling, screaming about betrayal, about both his sons turning against him, about how we'd pay for this, trying to buck my brother off, landing a few weak punches. Daniel punched him once, hard, right in the face, broke his nose. That's for every kid you manipulated, every dollar you stole, every life you tried to control. My dad stopped fighting after that, went limp, whimpering. Police showed up 3 minutes later, paramedics right behind them. They separated everyone, took statements. My face was already swelling, shirt torn, bruises forming on my ribs. My dad's nose was definitely broken, face already starting to swell. The officer took photos of my injuries, of the broken door, of the shattered coffee mug, of my terrified kids peeking out from their room. I told him everything, showed him the restraining order on my phone, pulled up the security footage from my camera that had caught the whole thing. Clear video of my dad kicking in the door, attacking me. My dad tried to claim self-defense. My brother corrected that lie immediately. Said he'd witnessed the entire assault, that our father had broken into my home and attacked me unprovoked. They arrested my dad, cuffed him right there in my kitchen and walked him out. He was still yelling threats as they put him in the cruiser. The officer told me I could press charges for assault, breaking and entering, violating a restraining order. Asked if I wanted to. I said yes to everything. They took my brother's statement separately. He admitted to hitting our father, but claimed defense of another. The officer said given the circumstances, they weren't charging him with anything. My dad would be facing multiple charges, likely jail time given the restraining order violation. After everyone left, I sat on my kitchen floor with my kids, both of them crying, clutching me. Ava kept saying she was scared. Owen said he wanted to kill Grandpa for hurting me. His hands were shaking. Ava had wet herself during the fight, something she hadn't done since she was 5. The fear had been that intense. I held them both and told them it was over, that we were safe now, promised them I'd never let him near us again. My brother stayed the night, helped me board up the broken door until I could get it fixed, called a locksmith who came out emergency rate and changed all the locks, called a lawyer he knew who handled family law and criminal matters, got me set up with an emergency consultation for Monday morning, made sure my security cameras were all working, checked every window lock twice. We sat up late, Daniel and I, drinking coffee and talking. All the years of manipulation and abuse, all the times we'd made excuses for them, all the damage they'd caused. He asked if I regretted cutting them off, knowing it led to this. I told him that the only thing I regretted was not doing it sooner. He said he was proud of me. I made a joke about how I'd finally found the line. Apparently it was somewhere between financial exploitation and felony assault. He laughed. My dad was charged with assault, criminal trespass, violation of a restraining order, and attempted intimidation of a witness when they found the letters and messages. He made bail after 3 days, but was fitted with an ankle monitor and ordered to have zero contact with me or my children. His lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, claiming my dad was under extreme emotional stress and not thinking clearly. The judge didn't care. Said a restraining order is black and white. You either comply or you go to jail. Set a trial date for 3 months out. My mom tried to visit me the week after. Showed up at my door with flowers and a card. I didn't let her in. She stood on my porch crying, saying she didn't understand why I was doing this to her, that she'd lost her husband and couldn't lose her sons too. Kept ringing the doorbell, knocking, calling through the mail slot. I reminded her through the closed door that she'd lost her husband because she'd enabled his behavior for years, participated in the financial exploitation, that she'd chosen her side and needed to live with the consequences, that I had the whole confrontation on camera and would call police if she didn't leave. She left the flowers on the porch. I threw them away. My aunt, the good one, came by with groceries and a check to cover the broken door repair. Said half the family had figured out the truth and were ashamed they'd believed my parents' lies. Said the other half were still drinking the manipulation juice, but were starting to question things given my dad's arrest. My mom was apparently telling everyone that I'd provoked my dad into attacking me so I could have him arrested. The story kept changing depending on who she was talking to. Either I was the mastermind villain or the ungrateful victim. She couldn't keep her lies straight. My brother reconnected with some of the extended family who'd reached out to apologize. Started rebuilding bridges that our parents had burned years ago. Turns out a lot of people had suspected something was off, but didn't know how to intervene. The preliminary hearing came. My dad showed up in a suit, playing the respectable victim. His lawyer argued I'd had no right to close the joint account, that the restraining order was based on false accusations, that my dad was simply a concerned father trying to check on his son. My lawyer presented the evidence. 3 years of financial records showing one-way money flow, threatening letters, security footage of the drive-bys, screenshots of my mom's smear campaign messages, medical photos of my injuries, photos of the broken door, the security footage of the assault itself, my brother's witness statement, the police report from my workplace incident. The prosecution added their own evidence. Judge listened to everything and ruled there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial. Kept all the charges. Denied my dad's request to modify the restraining order. My dad's face when the judge read the ruling was almost worth the broken ribs. The trial was set for May. My lawyer said given the evidence and the restraining order violation, we were looking at potential jail time for my dad. Maybe a year, maybe more depending on the judge. Said the assault alone was serious, but violating a protective order elevated everything. I asked what would happen if he was convicted. The lawyer said felony assault charge would likely mean probation at minimum, possible prison time, mandatory anger management, permanent criminal record. His reputation would be destroyed beyond repair. My mom tried one more guilt trip. Sent a letter through a cousin begging me to drop the charges, saying she was losing her husband and it would destroy their lives. Said she knew they'd made mistakes, but they were still my parents and deserved forgiveness. I sent a response through the same cousin. Short and direct. They'd spent years destroying my life financially and emotionally while I raised 2 kids alone after my wife died. They'd had countless chances to be decent human beings and had chosen cruelty every time. The legal system was giving them the consequences they'd earned. My mom could learn to live with those consequences, or she could leave me alone. Only 2 options. She chose to keep playing victim to anyone who'd listen. Lost most of her friends once word got around about the arrest and evidence. Lost her church group after the pastor heard the full story and suggested she needed to take accountability. Lost her sister, my good aunt, who told her publicly that she was ashamed to be related to her. Both her sons had cut her off completely. She was facing a future where her husband might go to prison, and she had nobody left to manipulate into supporting her lifestyle. The house was already in foreclosure, had been since they stopped receiving my monthly bailouts. I felt nothing about it. My kids started therapy, specialized counseling for children who'd witnessed domestic violence. The therapist said they'd bounce back fine but needed support processing what they'd seen. I started putting the money I wasn't sending my parents toward actual savings. Emergency fund, college accounts for the kids, repairs on the house that I'd been putting off for years. Within 2 months, I had more financial stability than I'd had since Julie died. My brother and I started having regular dinners together. Sometimes just us, sometimes with my kids. Building the family we should have had all along, one that wasn't based on manipulation and control. 3 months after the assault, the trial date arrived. My dad took a plea deal at the last minute. Avoid trial in exchange for guilty plea on reduced charges. 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation after release, permanent restraining order, mandatory counseling for anger management and family dysfunction. His lawyer had probably told him a jury would destroy him given the evidence. My parents had spent years training me to accept their treatment, to believe I deserved it, to think that family meant unlimited tolerance for abuse. They'd been wrong. Family means the people who show up for you, who support you, who don't exploit your grief and vulnerability for their own gain. 6 months after sentencing, Ava asked if we were going to visit Grandpa in jail. I asked her if she wanted to. She thought about it and said no. Said she felt safer knowing he was locked up. Owen nodded agreement. Said he hoped Grandpa stayed there forever. That night, I took out the folder labeled, "In case I forget why I stopped answering." All the receipts, all the messages, all the proof of years of exploitation. I'd kept it as protection. Now I didn't need it anymore. I went out back to our old fire pit, tossed the papers in and lit them up, watched years of their garbage turn to ash. My brother came over the next weekend. We ordered pizza, let my kids stay up late watching movies. Once they were asleep, we sat on the porch with coffee. He asked how I was doing with everything. I told him the truth. Hardest year since Julie died, but also the most necessary. My kids were happier. I was healthier. Our future looked better than it had in years. He raised his coffee cup. Said here's to being free. I clinked my cup against his. Said here's to never going back. And that's my story, Reddit. My life isn't defined by what I left behind anymore. It's defined by what I'm building. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.